Hi, everyone. Are you one of those people who finds nonfiction boring? I know there are a lot of people that do, but I personally love nonfiction. Now, I read a lot of it, as you guys know. A lot of what I read is historical nonfiction. I just love learning about history, but history can be boring if you read the wrong books. But I also have read some that aren't necessarily history that are also very interesting that I think you guys might like. So I have made a list of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have made a list of 7 nonfiction books that I have read in the last few years that I really, really enjoyed, and I think that other people might enjoy as well. So the first one on my list is Powers and Thrones, A New History of the Middle Ages by Dan Jones. This one was published in 2021. And to be completely honest and everything, I love anything by Dan Jones. I love listening to his podcast. I love reading his books. I love listening to his audiobooks. I just love everything by Dan Jones. He makes history so interesting and so entertaining. Dan Jones is an English historian of the Middle Ages, and he has written quite a few books. He has also now written, I believe it's 3 novels that I'm looking forward to trying as well. But this particular book, Powers and Thrones, takes you from the fall of Rome all the way through the Middle Ages and tells the story of the rise and the fall of different powers of the European world and the Western Islamic world. And I have been just finding it so intriguing, so interesting. I love his storytelling because he not only tells the history in kind of an entertaining way, that he has a sense of humor that definitely comes across in his books and on his podcasts, but he also finds little known facts that make the history extra fun to read. Like, for example, in this one, there's a story about this guy named Alcuin of York, who wrote a lot of philosophical writings and religious writings and that sort of thing. But he also wrote a poem about the stench of the latrine. And in the footnotes, Dan Jones gives what that poem was. And I just find that kind of stuff makes history very entertaining when you can find those little details that not everybody automatically knows. It's also very, very well researched, and there's lots of references to original sources, which I find really cool. And I will say that the absolute highlight is the audiobook for this book, which is read by Dan himself, because his voice is absolutely wonderful for audiobooks. I have his physical books, but I am going to be also listening to them as audiobooks just so I can hear him read the stories to me, because he has the perfect voice for it. And like I say, he makes history very interesting. Some of his books are about time periods that I was never overly interested in. Like I've never been really into the monarchy and the history of the English and French kings and all that sort of thing, but Dan Jones is getting me into it. I'm actually enjoying learning more about all the different characters and everything in medieval history in particular. And I credit Dan Jones with that, because I never had a lot of interest in that kind of thing before. I was more into, like I love the Viking Age, and I love reading about Canadian history and those sorts of things. And Dan Jones has gotten me really into medieval history. I've always liked fiction set in a medieval setting, but now I'm starting to really enjoy the nonfiction as well. The next one I'm going to mention is also a history book, and that is Klondike, The Last Great Gold Rush, 1896 to 1899 by Pierre Berton. This one was originally published in 1972. Now, Pierre Berton was a Canadian author and historian. He's since passed away, but he wrote over 50 books. And I credit Pierre Berton with originally getting me interested in reading history books in general and Canadian history in particular. I never had a huge interest in that topic until when I was in high school. I started reading some of Pierre Berton's books and really, really enjoyed them. This particular book follows the stories of the men and women who flocked to the Yukon and to the Klondike for the gold rush. He always finds really unique and interesting characters and then brings them to life on the page. So in this one, you're following characters on both the Canadian and the American side. And it's interesting too, because he uses a juxtaposition to show the differences between how things were in Dawson City versus across the line in Yukon. And I just find that super interesting as well. I love his narrative nonfiction style. It reads like a really well told story. I also love his descriptions. His description of the Klondike River in the first couple pages of this book has been, ever since I first read this one, which I think was one of the first ones I read back in high school, ever since then, that description of the Klondike River remains one of my favorite pieces of writing of all time. I just love his description and the way he just brings it alive to you. And that's always been one of my favorite pieces of writing. He also keeps the stories very interesting by focusing on the unique people who lived during that period rather than just talking about the event. That way you're learning about all these unique characters, and that just really keeps you going and keeps you interested in the story. So I highly recommend anything that Pierre Berton wrote. Like I say, he wrote over 50 books. I've also read and really enjoyed his one on the Great Depression. And I have read and enjoyed his one about the Arctic explorers called, what's that one called? I read that one for Polarathon this year. Oh, the Arctic Grail. That's what that one's called. That one was a really, really interesting one too. Just love his writing. Can't recommend it enough. For something a little bit different, I wanted to recommend What I Mean When I Say I'm Autistic, Unpuzzling a Life on the Autism Spectrum by Annie Kotowitz. It was originally published in 2022. This is a mix of memoir, and it's a book that provides insight into life on the autistic spectrum. She uses her own experiences as an autistic woman to explain what it's like in her mind and how being autistic affects her day-to-day life and how she thinks and reacts in various situations. And it's all told from a woman's perspective. And I think this is really important because the more I've been reading about autism, the more you learn that women often go undiagnosed because the research has always been focused on boys. They always thought that boys were more prone to autism than girls, when in fact, women and young girls are just much better at masking it. So a lot of young girls learn to mask at an early age and went undiagnosed, and now as adults are seeking diagnoses but having trouble getting them because they are so good at masking and so good at forcing themselves to do neurotypical things in a neurotypical world when that is not what is in their nature, and it leads to a serious amount of burnout. I found this book very, very insightful. It definitely helped me to further understand my neurodivergent brain. It is very easy to read. I actually read it over the course of about one day. And because it is written in a very conversational style, you feel like you're just sitting there talking to her. And I really enjoyed that in the book. It felt like just having a good conversation with a friend. I think that this book would be a very good read for both women who have been diagnosed or suspect that they are on the spectrum, as well as I think it's a very good read for anyone who has somebody in the autism spectrum in their life, because she explains a lot about the differences in how neurodivergent and neurotypical minds see things. And I think that would definitely help people to better understand the autism spectrum and people who are on the autism spectrum. So I definitely enjoyed that book. I would like to buy that one and read it again. One book that I read last year and really enjoyed was A History of the World in 12 Shipwrecks by David Gibbons. This one was published in 2024, and it is by an underwater archaeologist. What he does is he takes a look at some shipwrecks that he has dived on in his archaeological studies, and then tells us what we can learn about history from what they find. It's a really interesting topic. He actually goes from the Bronze Age all the way through World War II and looks at 12 wrecks and describes not only what they found and what that can tell us about the people and the places where they were found, but also he looks at the history of human migration, colonization, the spread of religion and other ideas, all those sorts of things through studying these shipwrecks. It's just a really interesting topic, the way he brings it around to not just the individual shipwrecks, but also how it shows that progression of humanity. He tells each story in a really engaging way. He also explains how they do underwater archaeology and what kinds of things can survive over the years underwater. The ocean water, being salt water, is so corrosive to so many things, and it's interesting to see what they can recover from wrecks from pre from like even pre the Roman Empire, from 2,000, 3,000 years ago. It's very interesting to see what they can recover. My only beef with this book was that there weren't enough maps for my liking, and I would have liked more diagrams in each chapter to help visualize what they were finding. He had a center section that had lots of pictures and that sort of thing in it, but I would have really liked if each chapter had a map and maybe some more diagrams, because then I could really visualize it. But overall, it was a really excellent read. I learned a lot, and I thought it was a really fun way to learn more history because it was something just a little bit unique and a little bit different. Next up, on a completely different tack again, I want to mention Beyond the Story, the 10-year record of BTS. This is written by Myung-Suk Kang and BTS and came out in 2023. Now, this is the story of currently the biggest band in the world, and it is told by the band members through interviews. It follows their story from the beginning of the band's creation through their 10-year anniversary, which happened in 2023. And it shows how they went from being a band of young boys in a very small company against all odds, came through adversity to become the biggest band in the world now. It is honestly, I know a lot of you are thinking, I only would read that if I was a fan of the band. But it is a great read, even if you aren't a huge fan, just simply because it's a real life underdog story. And it has very interesting characters that you can root for. And I've always enjoyed reading underdog stories and seeing how people can overcome all kinds of adversity to successfully reach the top. I really enjoyed learning about their past, learning where they came from, learning about each individual member and the different adversities that they faced. I learned a lot about the Korean music industry as well through reading this book. And I really enjoyed the interview aspect of the storytelling. The author gathered hours and hours of interviews with the guys in the band where they reflected on all the things that they faced in their journey. And he really weaves them into the story well, weaves the interview pieces into the story well. And I just thought that was a really brilliant way of telling the story in the guys' own original voices. This is a translation from Korean, and it's translated very well. I know a lot about the band because I'm a fan, and I could sense each of their voices even in the translation. So that was done really, really well. And I just wanted to recommend this one if you like an underdog story, because it is such a interesting read, and I think you'll gain a little bit more appreciation for where these guys came from, and also just get the enjoyment of watching their rise and the way they didn't quit when they had every right to quit. So I really highly recommend that one as well. That was just a very fun read. I've actually read it twice, and it was a very fun read. Another nonfiction that I really enjoyed was How to Keep House While Drowning by Casey Davis. This one was published in 2022, and it is a really short book, but it's packed with lots of useful information. It gives you really practical advice on how to take care of your living space when you struggle with mental health. And as someone who is neurodivergent and struggles with mental health, I found the stuff that she talked about in there to be really, really useful. She presents things with an emphasis on avoiding negative self-talk and the feelings of shame that are often associated with caring for your home when you have mental health issues and you're struggling. There's a lot of shame that tends to go along with that, and she really puts an emphasis on avoiding that. She also has divided the book into short sections, so it allows you to read a section and then put what she tells you about into action right away, which also prevents you from becoming overwhelmed, which I really appreciated as well, because as someone who is neurodivergent and does struggle with mental health, you can easily become overwhelmed with new information when you're learning something along those lines. With this one, I did listen to the audiobook, which was read by the author, which was really good. But I do want to reread it with a physical copy so that I can highlight and tab it, because I found when you're listening to the audiobook, it's not as easy to just grasp a concept and run with it as it would be if you were actually physically looking at it, for me anyways, because I do tend to read more physically. So that one was just another quick read and very useful. And I definitely want to read that one again and glean more information from it. The final one that I'm going to mention is another different one altogether. And this has always been one of my favorite nonfiction books. It's a little bit older, but I just love it. I've read it several times and I'm due for a reread again. And that is The Wisdom of Donkeys, Finding Tranquility in a Chaotic World by Andy Merrifield. Now, this one was originally published in 2008. And it follows Andy Merrifield as he goes on a walking tour across southern France. With his companion on his walking tour is a donkey named Gribouille. I believe that's how you say it. In the story, he goes on this walking tour with Gribouille, and he spends his time contemplating literature and science and nature and all kinds of other topics while he is learning from Gribouille as he goes. And I just really, really enjoyed the story. It has a lot of themes of observing the world around us, being mindful of living in the present. It's a very, very cozy book to read, easy to read, and I find it a very comforting read. I enjoyed the travel aspect as well as all his quiet contemplations. It was a very, very relaxing read. The donkey is entertaining, and the donkey teaches him a lot of lessons about life as he goes. And that's what I really love about this, as somebody who loves donkeys, as you know, and has a sanctuary for them. And I have learned so much about life from my donkeys as well. So I just really appreciate this book. I love this. I love his writing. I love the atmosphere of the book. It's such a relaxing read. If you need a comfort read, this is the one to go for. I just cannot say enough good things about this book. Like I say, I've read it multiple times, due for another reread again. And I just absolutely love this book. So that is 7 of the nonfiction books that I've read in the last couple of years and wanted to recommend to you over a variety of topics. I hope you got some inspiration there. Let me know down in the comments if you read any nonfiction and what your favorite topics to read about are. I have tons of different topics. I have history of the world. I have history of Norway, Canada. I've got all kinds of books about animals. I've got books on cats and dogs and horses, and I have books on writing, and I have books on science, and I have books on photography and all kinds of things. And so I just love reading nonfiction and learning a little bit of something from everyone. So let me know down in the comments what some of the best nonfiction you've read are, and if you're inspired to try any of these books. And I will see you guys soon on another video. Bye.